Okay, and our first speaker is Luke Ormand, works with the Town of Brookhaven. He's been a real asset in pretty much everything I do, particularly the River Otter project. But he's going to talk about safe wildlife passages. This is a huge issue on Long Island with our dense road network, affecting not only the resurgence of the river otter here on Long Island, but a lot of other species. So it's a very important initiative, and we hope to really get a lot more of this going in the future. So Luke, come on up. And that's the go button, basically. And you got the laser printer there if you want, and that's back, okay? And there's your time.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Luke Ormand. I'm with the Town of Brookhaven Division of Land Management. This project was spearheaded by John Turner, who's sitting in the front row. He'll be presenting later on today. If any of you know John, you know that once he gets excited about something, he doesn't let it go, and he has the ability to pull anyone who's near him into that project and turn them into passionate people themselves. So that's how I ended up standing here. So the problem. On East Bartlett Road in Middle Island, John Turner was doing some surveying of vernal pools. He came across hundreds of dead frogs in the road because they were moving from, there's a small pond over here, and they were moving to a large pond over here. Unfortunately, they get struck by cars. This is a gray tree frog. So we had to figure out a way to get past that. So the location is Middle Island. As the name implies, it's in the middle of the island. The red circle is approximately where this was occurring. The green area is Prosser Pines County Park. That thin blue line is the Carmans River. And here's a better map showing the vernal pools. Those are the white and blue areas. All those lines there are topographic lines. They're each 2 feet, so you can see that it's pretty, pretty steep along either side. And East Bartlett Road then is kind of a valley. So the frogs that live in the forest, spring peepers, things like that, they move from each pond. These ponds are smaller and they tend to dry up quickly. So eventually they need to get over to the other side of Bartlett Road. So these green arrows all represent the easy ability for the frogs to move through the forest, right? There's no real impediments. Once they get to the road, they have a problem, right? If you're a little frog, you got to cross this giant road, you're likely to get hit by a car, especially at night. So that's what the red arrow represents. Then they're going to the bigger ponds. The yellow arrow represents a driveway. So obviously not nearly as dangerous as the road, but still presents a little bit of a problem for these frogs. So UVM, University of Vermont, had done a study. The study team conducted standardized surveys during the amphibians' brief spring migration windows, walking the road each rainy evening and recording every amphibian alive or dead across 12 species of frogs, toads, and salamanders. They found 5,273 amphibians, including 1,702 spotted salamanders, nearly half of which were dead, and 2,545 spring peeper frogs, nearly 70% of which were dead. So nearly half the species that they found were spring peepers, and 70% of those had died. So this is an illustration from a children's book. It's a little girl with her family. She says the road is in the way. You can see we've got salamanders and frogs that are trying to cross the road on a big night, a rainy, cold evening in spring. And then it says, why did people have to build a road here? The creatures are so tiny, the tires are so big, the cars go so fast, and what about the times that they cross when we aren't there to help them, right? So you think about this problem all across Long Island, all across the Northeast, all across the US, there's not people there to help. In this instance, the road was actually part of the Talmadge Trail, so it's been there since at least the 1700s. So this was not an intentional, man just picked the easiest place to pave a road. It has been there for a long time, but the problem persists. So what's the solution? So as I mentioned, John Turner had kind of spearheaded this project. He did a lot of research, and he came across a solution, which was a concrete tunnel created by a company called ACO. So we presented this to the town board, we presented it to the highway department. They both greenlit the project. We picked a location. It was kind of the low point in the road, connects Suffolk County Water Authority property to, at the time, private property, which ended up, the town ended up purchasing it once the owner kind of saw this project and saw how important the habitat was. He had plans to relocate, so the town ended up buying it and removing the house further, increasing the suitable habitat for these species. So one day in the spring, we closed the road, dug a trench, dropped it in, paved it. Pretty straightforward installation. The highway department did have some fun. The blue-collar guys do like animals, despite their tough reputation. So the Hopland Tunnel and Frog's Neck Bridge. Unfortunately, it was a temporary sign. It's no longer there, but frogs can't read, so it doesn't really matter. So the tunnel was completed in April of 2022. The cost of the tunnel was about $22,000, which was not terribly expensive. 30 feet in length, 19 inches wide, 12 and a half inches high. And maintenance to date is zero. We do, especially after this winter, probably going to redo the pavement abutting that, just because it gets a lot of heavy traffic, but pretty much it's maintenance free. So then fencing, you'll see we've got the metal fencing in that picture. That picture's from, I think, December. That was the initial plan, but it was damaged when it came to us. So in the interim, we had installed plastic fencing. It's like a real high, durable, thick fencing, which we then moved further down the road once we got the metal fencing installed. So all in, we've got 360 linear feet of metal fencing, 350 linear feet of plastic fencing. The cost of the fencing was $35,000, and the install was about the same, which is pretty expensive, but we have to use prevailing wage as a township, and they had to close the road, have a flagger, all that stuff. So there were some extra costs on that. But you're all sitting here wondering if it works. I wouldn't be standing here if it didn't work. So here was the proof that it did work. It took me about a year to get the camera at the site, but there was a bullfrog going through. Ironically, it's the only bullfrog I've had go through this tunnel. So here's some other frog species, right? Gray tree frog, spring peeper. These are true tree frogs. They only need the wetlands to breed, and then the first stages of life, and then they go into the forest. For those of you not familiar, spring peepers are unbelievably small. That one had just emerged from the pond, so it's a little on the small side, but they really don't get much bigger than your thumbnail. So again, imagine you're a spring peeper trying to cross a road, or you're driving and come across spring peepers. There's nothing you can do about it. So the gray tree frog I actually had found on site one day. It was kind of emerging from the ground, where it had probably overwintered, so I did take the opportunity for a photo op. But over here, we do have a video. Again, this was shortly after, a couple days after that bullfrog. And there's a spring peeper up on that top, but you can't see it because they're really small. So life isn't perfect just because we made a tunnel for the frogs, right? You can see here in the circle, those two little dots are eyes. The raccoon sees those eyes. Unfortunately, the frog didn't have anywhere to go. But you can hear the sound of all the frogs chirping and calling. I don't know how the guy lived at the house here. It is incessant. I mean, I love frogs, but it is deafening for months. Whoops, let me go back. So let's say you're a tree frog and you made it through the tunnel, then everything is fine, right? Unless, of course, a raccoon comes and has a sense of smell and picks up your track. I will say this has only happened a handful of times. almost always when a raccoon goes through, it's just moving through. But this one was a nursing female, so maybe she needed a little extra food. But you can see she's actively following that scent. She grabs the frog off camera, massages it in her hands. I'm not showing the clips where she turns it into frog legs. But again, this only happened on these 2 instances, so at least we don't, the frogs aren't setting up camp. So we know the tunnel works for frogs, right? That's, it's clear. The spring peepers are moving through. I'm not getting a ton of video from them, largely because they're so small. The tree frogs, I tend to pick them up pretty well. But what other species are using it, right? This is kind of where the surprise comes in. Obviously, the raccoons are using it, but raccoons are everywhere. Chipmunks, once they kind of found this tunnel, they just began using it constantly. In the summer, they represent probably 75% of my videos. They just are running back and forth. They bring nuts back and forth. They kind of lounge around. They really spend a lot of time. Virginia possum, kind of similar to raccoon. Anyone who's done any camera trapping knows that these species are pretty widespread throughout Long Island. And they show up in anywhere where you're going to find a raccoon. Again, nothing too exciting with possums going through, pretty much just back and forth. I haven't had any go back and forth with young. There haven't been any interactions with any other species. Everyone seems to do a good job of taking turns, except for the frogs and the raccoons. Mice, especially in the last year, so it kind of seems that maybe there's 1 or 2 individuals that find it, and then they realize that it's a great way to go back and forth nice and safely. So I've had a lot of mice activity, especially this winter, even in the snow. They've got tunnels on either side, in the snow to keep warm, and then they use the tunnel to get back and forth to either side. So this one has a nut in its mouth. And then moves through the tunnel. Infrequent visitors. So I'm a wildlife photographer. I like to find the stuff that is not very common. That's, what's really exciting. So as much as I enjoy videos of raccoons and frogs and things like that, I like to see the stuff that doesn't happen too often, right? So here we've got a black racer. And I had actually seen a black racer probably about 2 years ago climbing a tree when I was at this site. So it was really nice to see them using the tunnel. One of the issues with these cameras is that they usually use heat sensors, so they don't pick up reptiles a lot. So I presume that there's more movement with snakes going through this tunnel, but they don't always get caught on camera. There was one other time where I had the tail end of a black racer going through, but it's not a frequent occurrence. This was a bit of a surprise, having the big snapping turtle move through. The date on this one is 6/10. It went over to the other side, and presumably on the 18th, it's the same individual that's coming back. So this is going from the big pond to the small pond. I guess it just didn't find the other side terribly suitable. And here's a sort of collage of different species that I've found, right? And there's a quote from that came out of that University of Vermont study. It says, "It's basic ecology. The whole system is interrelated. If we begin losing some of our biological diversity, the threat is to all of our biological diversity." I don't really have to explain that to the people in this room because you're all here because you care. But when we see the movement of animals through this tunnel, right? So we can see the chipmunks and mice that are moving seeds and nuts from one side to the other, right? Maybe they're burying those, they forget about them, and now we have, a new tree or a shrub or whatever that grows on the other side that maybe otherwise wouldn't. We see the raccoons that are predating on the frogs. You'll see the snake moving. Maybe the snake is going to eat a mouse on the other side, things like that. So if we have a situation where, again, the Vermont study says half of these, species that are crossing are spring peepers, and 70% of those are dying, eventually you're going to get to a point where the spring peepers aren't crossing anymore, and that's just going to have a domino effect. So I'm not going to read all the species, but I do want to point 2 things out. 14 species have physically used the tunnel on camera. Then there's a number of birds, probably 7, 8, 9, 10 birds that have kind of frequently stopped in front of the camera. Now again, I do a lot of camera trapping throughout Brookhaven Town. I can tell you that the most bird species I've had is at this location, and again, the camera's looking at a basically 2 foot by 2 foot area. So for all of these animals to come to one spot is a direct result of the tunnel being there. Sometimes there's enough water in the ponds that it flows through, so it can carry some insects and things like that. That's attracted birds. There's been ant nests that have attracted birds. Again, some of these animals are moving. Maybe there's insects dropping off of them or something like that that's attracting them. Domestic cat I have had through here. I can think of maybe one location I've put a camera in the woods that didn't have a cat show up. I don't know where they come from, but they will always show up, and they have no problem going through the tunnel. Not seen to date, eastern box turtle, green frog, wood frog, various snake species, various salamander species. Those I kind of would expect. We are going to potentially try out a camera that has a laser trip on it that will get everything, every spider that crosses. So we'll see if there's maybe some more species that we're not getting because of other limitations. So this picture over here was from not too long ago. You can see the camera kind of half buried in the snow, and you can see those tracks there. So even with all this snowfall, the raccoon is going through, mice are going through, possums are going through. So what's next for Brookhaven? We are working, we got a grant for doing some tunnels at Cedar Beach and Mount Sinai for the diamondback terrapin. Again, this is another John Turner project where he sucks somebody in our office into writing a grant. So we're going to do 2 or 3 tunnels. The grant project is $225,000, including fencing and monitoring that CTUC is going to do. So right now the turtles come out of Mount Sinai Harbor. There's very little beach area there. They have to cross the road to get to good, suitable habitat. So this is going to hopefully make that easier for them. And then in the next couple of months, we're redoing a culvert in Yaphank on the Carmens River. So it's just south of Upper Lake. There is an existing fish passage there. It's a pretty simple box culvert, but what we are doing is putting in a 2 foot wide sort of wildlife shelf. So animals that either can't go through the water or prefer not to go through the water can still move forward. So again, this is a very simple thing that can be added on to an existing project, right? It's not costing a lot of money, but it's accomplishing something significant. And we do have a lot of otter movement. Obviously, the otters have no problem going through the water, but sometimes, if you have the option to go through that shelf, it would be beneficial. So as far as funding is concerned, the feds did have a program that finished up this year for $350 million for these types of projects. A lot of this stuff is focused on megafauna. It's not too exciting if you're trying to seek millions of dollars to protect a spring peeper. But that being said, there are a lot of state grants that you can kind of massage into doing these wildlife tunnels, or like the culvert that we're doing. Again, if you can tie it into an existing stormwater project or something like that. There's multiple different funding opportunities through New York State grants and other programs. So just some resources. Again, that children's book is called Safe Crossings by Carrie Percival. It's a fantastic children's book. It explains the whole process of basically building a tunnel. It really is like the perfect illustration. Crossings, How Road Ecology is Shaping the Future of Our Planet by Ben Goldfarb is another great resource that's out there. And then, I've got a volunteer handbook from New York State DEC and Cornell, as well as a program out of California and the University of Montana. Biodiversity Works is based in Martha's Vineyard. They've done a lot of work on black racers, being able to get them across roads safely, and obviously CTUC. And then a special thank you to our partners.